you can modify that motion back, upwards. Up. Here we go. Member makes the motion. I second the motion, which means two people think it's a good thing to talk about. The assembly takes it up. The presiding officer places it in front of the group. It becomes your property now. You can do with it what you want. Opens up the debate. Yes, no, yes, no. Then time to put for a vote. Do we want to do this? Do you want to buy me a Bentley or don't you? And then finally, the presiding officer announces the result that the Munich Prostmasters will buy me a Bentley. Then, that was a main motion. Subsidiary motions get handled the same way, but they have an order of preference. Too hot to handle? Go to the next one. Change. The club, instead of buying me a new Bentley, will buy me a used Bentley. That's a modification of the original motion. Refer to a committee. Does the finance committee think there's enough money? Postpone. That's obvious. Limit or extend limits of debate. If you keep hearing the same arguments going around in circles, you can say, Mr. Chairman, I propose that we close the debate or limit it for 5 more minutes, and then we proceed to a vote. Stop debate right now, time to vote. The Assembly can decide to do that, but then we vote on the motion itself. Finally, lay on the table, put it aside for our next meeting. Then in the third session, we talk about privileged motions. Privileged because it's time we stop the action, because something's important. Call for the orders of the day. The presiding officer is not following the agenda. We should be talking about finance, and we're talking about location. Stick to the agenda. Brings a question of privilege. Maybe you can't hear. Maybe you can't hear me in the back because I'm speaking too softly. You have a right to hear what's going on. Or maybe there's some noise. May I close the door? May we move up closer? That sort of thing. Recess. We're tired. We've been sitting here for 2 hours debating. Let's take a break. You have a right to do that. Except when I'm speaking. Adjourn. We're tired. We want to go home. We haven't done anything. We haven't decided anything. That's okay. You have a right to do that if the Assembly wants, if a majority of the Assembly wants to do that. Fix the time to adjourn. We will adjourn until 9:30 this evening, at which point we will come back to the point of business we were talking about. Okay. No. Incidental motions. Point of order. I want some information. Next one. Appeal. The presiding officer makes a decision, and somebody says, don't agree with that decision. I propose that we appeal the decision of the chairman. Next one. Point of information. I need information to take a vote, to make a decision, an informed decision. As a member of the Assembly, I have a right to do that. Suspension of the rules. Normally, we do this, this, and this, but tonight, we as an Assembly decide we're going to do this, this, and that. We're changing things. If we want to do it, we can. We have the power to do that. Objection to consideration of a question. I don't think we should be talking about this. I don't think we should be talking about buying me a Ford Fiesta, because it's not appropriate. As we all know, the only vehicle appropriate for me is a Bentley. Therefore, let's not even consider the question of a Ford Fiesta. Division of a question. Very good example. I move that the Munich clubs, all 10 of them, host the next district or the 2014 spring conference in Presiding. Two components. 2014, Presiding. Maybe it's better to debate those two things separately, so the Assembly can decide to separate those two questions. First, let's talk about the date, then let's talk about the location. Consideration by paragraph. That's if a motion is very, very long and detailed. Maybe it's better to accept or reject each paragraph at a time, or amend paragraph at a time. You can do that. Division of assembly, let's say we took a voice vote, and it wasn't really clear how many were in favor, how many were opposed. It sounds about the same. Well, we can proceed then to either a written vote or a show of hands, or you can even divide the assembly. All those in favor of buying me a Bentley, go over there. All those opposed, go over there, and never come back. All right. Now, we're into tonight's final session. That was just a quick review of parliamentary procedures. What can an assembly do to correct an action taken? We're going to talk about 2 more motions. And those are the final 2 I'm going to tell you about. At this point, we will have learned 23 different types of motions. The assembly can reconsider an action that it has taken. But this motion to reconsider normally only comes at the same meeting at which the decision was made. You can't come back next week or 2 months from now and say, let's reconsider. No, it should be taken to the very same meeting. Let's say, for example, Mel Kelly proposes that we change our meeting location to Oberpfaffenhofen an der Ilm. He found a great meeting place. And we think, great, yeah, let's do this. But in the break, we think, wait a minute, Oberpfaffenhofen an der Ilm, that's like kilometers out of town. You need a car or a helicopter to get there. Well, we've already voted for it, but let's reconsider what we did. You can't make this if you came back next week. No. But usually at the same meeting when you take the decision, later on you could say, wasn't such a good idea after all. The motion is debatable if the question is debatable, and it does require a second. In the case of a convention, like the Toastmasters convention, the big Toastmasters annual convention in August, there are 2,000 people in the room. That's held on a Friday morning, normally, the business meeting. There, the rules state that a motion to reconsider can be made the next day, because the convention's still in session, the people are still together. But you can't reconsider once the gavel comes down and closes the convention. All right. Let's go to the next one. Rescind. This is the final motion, the 23rd motion we're going to talk about. Here, the club has decided to do something. And then at a subsequent meeting, we decide it wasn't such a good idea after all. For example, it may have been unrepresentative of the full assembly. Maybe the decision was taken with only a few people in the room. But it would be more representative to have a bigger body of people deciding. Maybe you have to correct it because the finances have changed. Funds aren't available for buying me a new Bentley. Or maybe we decided that the topic, after all, is something we shouldn't debate on. There's no time limit. I'm reading from the book here. There's no time limit on introducing this motion to rescind, provided that none of the actions called for in the original motion has been carried out in a way that it is too late to undo. Right? If some of those things have already been carried out, you can't rescind a decision. Let me just give you an example. Let's say this assembly, this Toastmaster Club, votes to behead Mel Kelly.
Thanks, Chris.
No, you could have picked something better.
Well, I propose amendment.
It doesn't happen very often. Although it happens probably more often than you think. So we decide this. Sergeant at Arms beheads Mel Kelly. And then at the next meeting, beginning of June, we're all here, and Mel's here minus his head. We think, maybe that wasn't such a good idea after all. Too late. You can't rescind that motion. The motion to rescind requires a motion and a second, is debatable if the action is also debatable. It requires, now here's a little thing. If the idea, the proposal to rescind has been announced in advance in the invitation to the meeting, or if it's in the agenda, it requires only a simple majority. But if it is completely out of the blue, then it requires a 2/3 majority. The reason for that is you don't want minority groups, splinter groups, trying to overturn the decision of the majority. Sometimes that will happen. In parliamentary procedures, the majority always rules. Let me go back to this one. The motion to reconsider, and it's also unique. This is at the same meeting. The motion must be brought by somebody who was in favor, who voted for the original motion, the original action. Why? Because again, you don't want minority splinter groups trying to overturn the decision of the majority. When an assembly decides to reconsider, in the case of going to Oberpfaffenhofen on the Ilm, there are three possible outcomes. The original decision could stand. You say, okay, we've reconsidered it, and yes, we want to go there for our meetings. Or the decision could be amended. We will meet at Oberpfaffenhofen once a month, and the other time we'll meet here. Or it can be overturned. Three possible outcomes. Remember, this motion to reconsider is debatable, and you vote on it, but that doesn't mean you've changed the original decision. All that does is open up the door to consider. Then you actually have to tackle the original decision. We voted to reconsider our decision to move to Oberpfaffenhofen. Now it's time to decide, do we want to do it or don't we? The needle goes all the way back to the point before the original vote was taken. That's when you take up the debate. All right, those are the last two motions. All in all, in parliamentary procedures, Robert's Rules provides for 86 different motions. But some of them are so exotic you may never ever see them in your lifetime. For most mortal people, including myself, who's not mortal, 23 is perfectly nice for handling most situations. That's all you'll ever really need. Yeah. Now, a couple of special questions after this. Let's see what the machine has for us. Can a motion be adopted when many members abstain? Group of 30 people in a room. We take a written vote, and the written vote says 7 in favor of the motion, 5 opposed. My mathematics tells me that 18 people did not vote. Is the motion adopted? Absolutely. The other 18 have exercised their right to abstain. Therefore, they cancel their right to be a factor that influences this decision. Majority wins. 7 were in favor, 5 were opposed. That is the voting majority. 7 is the voting majority. The motion is carried. Can a member be required to vote on a motion? No. Members have a basic right to abstain if they want to. They don't have to vote. There are a couple of good reasons why you might want to abstain. Maybe you really don't have enough information to make an informed decision on the pending question. You really don't know. Or maybe you're completely divided on a question. You could go one way or you could go the other. You really have no firm decision. That might be a reason. Or there could be a possible situation of conflict of interest. Let's say the club is voting to contract for some services, and I'm the service provider, or one of the members is a service provider. It might be a conflict of interest for that member to vote on that subject. In the case of the club buying me a Bentley, for example, I would certainly vote for that, yes. Next one. Can a motion be adopted by a plurality vote? The book says here, avoid that as much as possible. And what I mean by that is, if you have 3 questions, which shouldn't normally happen under parliamentary procedures. But let's say we have 3 candidates for an officer's position. That's fine, that could happen. 3 candidates, and none of the 3 candidates gets a majority of the votes. That could happen. Yeah, one has more than candidate B and C. Let's say candidate A has more votes than B or C, but candidate A does not have a majority of the votes of the whole assembly. That could happen. Okay, in that sort of situation, yes, but try to avoid that. If you're a member of the assembly, try to avoid having those multiple options. And as a chairman, also try to avoid multiple options. A or B, black or white. That's the way parliamentary procedures works. Can a presiding officer, in this case me, participate in debate? No. No, the presiding officer has to remain impartial and also give the impression of impartiality. Presiding officer can facilitate debate. He can help clarify points. Presiding officer can also clarify motions, but cannot show any favoritism. If the presiding officer wants to participate in the debate, because remember, the presiding officer is one of the members of the assembly, has a vote, then the presiding officer should turn over to a vice president, take a seat in the assembly, and stay seated in the assembly until that question has been cleared away. Then the presiding officer can. Right. Can a presiding officer introduce a motion? I'm a member of the assembly, but I can't introduce a motion because it might prejudice members in the audience. I can facilitate a motion. For example, when somebody makes often a main motion, the person gets up and starts talking, and the chairman can say, it sounds like you want to make a motion. And then you could help the person formulate a motion into very clear form. You can help with the wording. You can also, as a presiding officer, you can entertain a motion. I don't mean to show it DVDs. I mean, you can ask for, call for a motion. Very typically, there's evidently no more business to be transpired. You can say, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. You know, you can do that. Also, as a presiding officer, if someone says, Mr. Chairman, I propose that we divide the question, 2014 spring and Freising, 2 separate things, we could proceed to a vote, but I could say as chairman, if there is no objection to dividing the question, we will divide the question. It saves time, that's all. There's no need to take a vote because it's pretty obvious. If there is no objection, let's do it. Sounds like a good idea. Sometimes it's just plain practical common sense. Fine. What is an ex officio member, or Latin scholars? 5 years ago, I was district governor of District 59. I was a member of the district council that makes the decisions. Why? Because I was elected to do that. I was elected by a vote of thousands of Toastmasters. Well, it was about 250, actually.
10,000.
Yeah. The year after that, 4 years ago, I was still a member of the district council. I was the immediate past chairman. Nobody elected me onto that body, to that decision-making body, yet I had full rights to vote, to introduce motions. My vote counted as much as everybody else. Why? By virtue of my office, I was still a member of the district council 1 year after having been district governor. That's ex officio, by virtue of the office. In the club, the immediate past president is often considered an ex officio member. Nobody elected Mel as immediate past president, but by virtue of having done the job, he's on the team. That does that. In the remaining time, let's do a little quick parliamentary procedures exercise and see if you can remember some of the motions. I will entertain a motion to purchase me a brand new Bentley. Who will make that motion? Am I prejudicing you? Oh. Yes.
I move that we go on a hiking tour with the whole club this summer.
I second.
It has been moved and seconded that the club go on a hiking tour this summer.
I amend that proposal amendment that just Ranjit and Inika go on that hiking tour and make their movie for the year.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
Okay, the pending motion is now. Pending motion is now Ranjit and Inika on the deserted island of Tom Hanks. Any debate? You're allowed to speak first because you made the motion.
I think it would be very beneficial for the club and for humanity if you were to provide a service like that.
Anybody speaking opposing?
I would like the club to just give me that 100,000 to make that trip. That is an amendment to the amendment.
That's not an amendment to an amendment. That's a counter amendment. Oh. You have to debate you and Inika for one on the trip.
I'm in. He's in. Great. Honeymoon.
Point of information, do we have enough money to spend 100,000 for this trip?
No. We haven't got that far.
Okay, no, that's okay. The point of it is a privileged motion. He's allowed, as a member of the assembly, he has a right to know at any time, is there enough money? Who can answer that?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. They're doing it for free.
Okay. Yes.
Question. Are you sure we're doing that for free?
You don't have a choice. If we vote this.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sir?
I am sure that you will not.
A point of information. Would we have to ask Kate?
Kate is writing the script.
I want to limit the discussion for 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
More.
Okay.
More.
2 minutes, at which we'll proceed to vote on the amendment. On the amendment. Okay. Any further discussion? If there is no further discussion,
Is that an amendment? I want to propose that all the proceeds from the sale of this film come to the club.
oh wait a minute now. You made a, I'm sorry. You made a motion to limit the debate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Vote.
Second.
Second. Okay. It has been seconded. It's moved and seconded that we limit debate on the question. That is now the pending motion. Not Inika and Ranjit. Not the hike. The pending motion is, do we want to limit debate or don't we? All those in favor of limiting debate, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. All those opposed to limiting debate to 2 minutes, please raise your hand. Abstentions? The majority vote carries it. Therefore, we will limit debate to 2 minutes, at which point we will proceed to a vote. We already used one member already. Anything further about Ranjit and Inika? Hiking.
I'd like to raise a motion that the proceeds from the sale of this film come to the club.
I want to debate that point.
Okay.
Can be,
The motion.
is it seconded?
Yeah, I second.
Okay. Pending motion is now the debates of the film.
Under the condition that we get a nice fee out of it first. That in the calculations we have our wages, our expenses, and a nice bonus on
That would make a nice amendment, except you can't have more than 2 amendments.
Point of order, 2 minutes are over.
Okay, we will now proceed. To the vote.
You get a euro.
Ranjit and Inika on the hike. Alone in the summer. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. All those opposed to that motion. Then it is moved and carried that Ranjit and Inika, instead of the whole club, will go with a video camera on a hike this summer. Thank you for your participation.